The information and ideas presented on this podcast are being provided to you as a thought stimulator for educational purposes only. Your choice to engage in a particular investment or investment strategy should be based solely on your own research and evaluation of the risks involved, your financial circumstances and your investment objectives.
Welcome back to Achieving Optimal. In this special client spotlight edition, I'll be chatting with trader, investor, educator, and entrepreneur Chuck Whitman. Chuck, welcome to the show. Let's kick this off with sharing with everyone how we got connected. Can you believe it's almost been a decade now?
Yeah, that's crazy, Tommy. First of all, thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it.
I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. We're going to have some fun today. And I had a good friend of mine who, this was in 2011, he handed me a book. And he goes, I was reading this book, and I totally thought of you when I read this. I think you should read this book. And the book was called Success is Not an Accident. And I was actually on a trip to Hawaii, and I read that book, and I thought the book was awesome. And I think my favorite part of the book, I've spent a lot of time in my life kind of studying coaching principles, and I'm a Christian in my faith. But the thing that really struck me about the book was that it was like Tony Robbins met the Bible.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it was really combining both. I would go to church and you hear a pastor give a sermon and you're like, yeah, but there's some better ways to do this. They're trying to make comments about things you do in life or whatever. And I'm like, no, but there's a better way to do this. But that's secular. You can't go there, right?
Right.
And then you hear somebody like a Tony Robbins or a Jim Rohn or something like that, and they have these great concepts, but they're not tying it to the spiritual side of us, which is the most important aspect of us.
Right. It's like everybody was in one camp or the other.
Exactly. What I loved about you was you put them together. So I read the book, and just how I am, how I've come to be, I read the book and I just said, I'm going to call him. And I'm going to ask him some questions, and I'm going to see if he could actually help me. So I got your number and I called you, and we had a conversation, and I joined, I think it was called the 1% Club at the time.
Yeah.
The coaching program. And you and I did that coaching program for about 4 months. And I'll never forget, on one of our calls, we start off the call, and you said, I really want to talk to you about something. I said, okay. Because I'm looking at your situation, and he goes, you have so much potential. There's so much sitting right in front of you. I really think I can help you. And what I'd like to offer you is a chance to do a one-on-one intensive coaching program where we actually, instead of having a call once a month, we'd have a call once a week. And I actually would work with you in person twice a month. One time a month, I'll come to Chicago, and one time a month, you pick anywhere in the world you want to go, and I'll meet you there.
That's right.
And we'll take a day, and we'll work on designing your life. And I'm like, that sounds awesome.
And that's what we did.
That's what we did.
I remember about that phone call is, and maybe it was a follow-up call after that, is you wanted to make sure that I would stand up to you.
Yes.
You said you wanted a alpha coach. I think that was
exactly
was the term that you used, because you said you'd worked with a couple other people, and when you didn't follow through on your commitments, they go, oh, it's all right, Chuck.
It's exactly right.
They enabled you.
Yes. I think sometimes one of the trappings of success is as you become successful, people become afraid to confront you.
I think that's true.
Yes.
And that's why so many people become isolated leaders.
Yes.
Because they are surrounded by individuals who just agree with them.
Yes.
Rather than confront them.
Yes.
And truly sharpen them. And I like doing that with all of my clients. Is,
yes.
Being, because I don't think it's just in coaching. I think it's in society. There's this crazy trend of safe spaces and that kind of nonsense. And that's not a growth space. What I want to create is growth spaces for people. And you have to hear things you don't like. You have to be uncomfortable. And I don't know how we drifted as a society away from challenging and rugged individualism and being the best you can be. But we've kind of done it little bit by little bit.
I totally agree. Well, the greatest moments of learning in our lives are in adversity. So when we go out of our way to shield ourselves from adversity or to shield ourselves from pain, we shield ourselves from the vital lessons of life
That's right. That's right.
that we need to learn.
And we eventually will have to confront them.
One way or
we
the
won't
other.
grow. So it's kind of like pay the bill now or
Yep.
pay a bigger, more inconvenient bill later down the road.
Yes.
Another thing I remember from our one-on-one coaching is the different locations that we'd be in. So Chicago, obviously.
Yes.
Atlanta, obviously.
Yes.
New York.
Yes.
But maybe the best place of all
Oh yeah.
was Miami, right on the beach.
Yes.
And we would have very unconventional coaching sessions.
Yes, we would.
And we wanted to get unconventional results.
Yes.
And so we would have a 3-hour walk on the beach.
I miss those.
Yes, where we'd be dreaming. And, so often people try to get their life together either on their own without the help of a coach, or they're in a stale conference room.
Yes.
Or something like that. And sometimes you have to have a physical environment that stimulates your creativity, because you recall how we would sometimes work in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we'd work in the afternoon.
Yep.
I remember 2 or 3 times where we went to dinner at about 8 or 9 o'clock.
That's right.
And then we came back from dinner and you said, hey, you got a couple more hours in you.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden it was 1:30.
Yes.
And we were in there on the whiteboard in the hotel suite.
Yes.
And the whole hotel was shut down.
Yes.
And we generated a lot of great ideas.
We did. We generated a lot of great ideas. One of the things I loved about that is I'm a big believer in visualization and actualization, being able to manifest what you want.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the great things about that was our coaching sessions. What we basically did is we inserted our sessions in the midst of my dream life, the midst of my favorite things. And I just think there was all kinds of subconscious programming and connections going on in those sessions as a result of the unconventional way we did them.
Yeah, and I think that there's so much process. I sometimes have, I try to educate my clients, and I know you're doing, you're coaching people now, which is the ironic thing.
Right.
But I try to coach my clients about the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so people are so programmed to want information.
Right.
And you need information.
Yes.
You need the right information for sure, but you also need a process that you can follow. You need to train. You need a system. And that's why we did, we would talk and strategize. I would share some things that have worked for other clients with you. You'd share some things that you had done. But ultimately, we did a lot of drills.
Yes, we did.
Where I put you through the ringer, where you were off on your own for a while, or we were standing and I was asking you to clarify your vision verbally. You remember we would, I would have you do that, and oftentimes I would get you abruptly because I didn't want you to plan or overthink it. And I said, okay, tell me your vision is 3 years from now. And I'd hit the record button.
Oh, yeah.
And you would look kind of stunned, and then it would be crappy, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd say, delete.
Yep.
And that's a great lesson for everybody is the creation process is one of a sloppy copy.
Yes.
Being willing to just draft it out. And then you come back and you lay it out better and then better. You constantly refine it, almost like, how the iPhone, launched, and think of when it launched originally and what it is now. It's just refine.
Yes.
And then finally you had a vision.
Yes.
It was about a 3-minute vision.
Correct.
That was a keeper.
It was. Yeah, it was because I actually used that as part of my morning routine for several years.
Yeah.
Either in my house, or I oftentimes would listen to it in the car as I was driving to work. And it was phenomenal.
Well, one of the things when we originally talked, and then I think subsequently I figured it out, I over the last few years, I've had not many, but I'd say a handful of potential clients. And after talking with them for 30 or 40 minutes on the phone, it was clear that all they wanted to do was work on their career.
Right.
And their business life.
Right.
And when I would start probing about the other components, their marriage, their fitness, their health, or their relationships with their kids, and all the non-economic sides of life, they kind of shut down and they didn't want to go there. And I'm thinking, you know what, I've been doing this too long. I don't want to be working with one-dimensional people
Yep.
or people that are denying that what is going on in the personal life drastically impacts what's going on in the business life, and
Yes.
vice versa.
Yes.
So that stood out with me.
Yeah, and actually on that note, one of the things I remember is when we kicked off doing our intensive work together, the first thing we did was we went to New York for, I think, 3 days.
Yeah, around Labor Day, wasn't
It
it?
was a Labor Day weekend, exactly. And basically what you said is you said, okay, this weekend we're going to go through and we're going to take an inventory of every aspect of your life. And we did. We went through literally every aspect of my life, my marriage, my role as a father, my role as a businessman, my role as a follower of God, the fun things I was doing in my life, the charitable things I was doing. We covered everything. And I often talk about that weekend because that was literally one of the most profound weekends of my life.
It was a turning point.
It was a major turning point. Because in doing that work, one of the things that you made really evident to me, I made evident to myself through the work you did with me, was that there was some areas of my life I was really unhappy. And I was choosing to gloss over them, not focus on them, focus forward, and kind of ignore or hope it would get better, these areas that were an issue for me. And out of that weekend, it became very clear to me there was 3 separate issues I had that were really prominent to me, and it became very clear I needed to fix them. And as you know, I went to work on them quite quickly.
Yeah, with a bulldozer.
With a bulldozer, yeah, and a sledgehammer, and,
Yeah.
the whole thing. But how powerful that was to be able to see that.
But think of the alternative, though. I mean, I think that's what we exhausted all options,
Yes,
and then the alternative to not taking the bulldozer was kind of unacceptable.
yeah, you're living a life you want your clients, you wanted me to live an outstanding life, a life that was enriching in all aspects, not one aspect. I follow my career, I make a lot of money, but my kids hate me because they never see me,
Right.
or that sort of thing, right? You really were trying to help me in every aspect, and not settling in any area. That's what you showed me, and that got me really excited. It got me really motivated to take action. That's why I did so quickly. And I've told you before, one of the things that's really kind of ironic but awesome is I came to work with you to be better in my career and better in my business as a businessman and so forth. But man, the impact you had on me as a dad, I'm a much better father to my kids as a result of you. I have a new daughter. She's going to be 2 in February. And I look at how I've handled her as a baby, how I cherish every moment. I didn't do that with my other girls.
Yeah.
But thanks to you, I was able to make up for that.
It's a fresh start.
It was a fresh start, and it was noticeable.
But what stood out to me about you was you were willing to experience. You didn't want to, but you were willing to experience the pain.
Correct.
That was required.
Correct.
To get to where you really wanted to go.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, and some of this is virtuous and some of it is cowardness,
Yep.
I believe.
Yep.
Is their preferred method is to cope.
Yes.
Rather than to face what needs to be faced.
Yep.
And fight the battle and then triumph on the other side.
Yes.
And I think some people just won't go through the pain. So they've created this artificial barrier that keeps them from growing. But
Yes.
you can't grow in the weight room without struggle,
Right.
stress,
Yes. Soreness. Yeah.
And you can't grow spiritually or emotionally in life without that as well. So if something is not, the lesson is, if something is not where it ought to be,
Yep.
then job number 1 is to get back on track as quickly as possible, because this is your one shot.
Yes.
At life
Yes.
to succeed, to be everything that God created you to be.
Yep. I heard something for the first time last week that was really profound for me. And it was talking about manifestation. And the phrase was, you can't manifest the future by pushing. you manifest the future by pulling.
Love it.
You
Love
go
it.
into the future and you pull yourself forward to your manifestation. That really resonated with me because in this process that we're describing, what we did is we put out a vision. So yes, was there short-term pain? Yes, there was. But when you can clearly visualize where you're going to be, you can go to the future, come back and pull yourself through the pain to realize what it is you want to become.
But a lot of people don't understand that.
Sure.
And recently I've been using this phrase that a number of clients have said, hey, that really resonates with me. I often said, how many times did I text you or call you or end a phone call or an email with think about your goals.
Yes.
Think about your goals. But recently I've adjusted that phrase just a little bit to say, think from your goal.
I like
and
that.
Think from your goal is a cooler thought.
Yes.
And it means you're already there.
Yes.
So think about your goal implies it hasn't happened yet.
Correct.
It's like, I will be lean
Yeah.
is thinking about your goal.
Yes.
I will get to the summit is thinking about your goal. It's an awesome view from here is thinking from your goal.
Yes.
I am lean and strong. That's
Yes.
thinking from your goal.
Yes.
And here's the weird friction that is very positive is that when you think from your goal, and you're not there yet, obviously, when you think from your goal, you're mentally there, but you're not physically there. And
Yes.
so there's this rub,
Yes.
this friction.
Yep.
And the only way to resolve it is to hit your goal
Yes.
or to stop thinking from your goal.
Yes.
In other words, to pretend that you're okay with how things are right now. Then
Yes.
the tension goes away. So most people, unfortunately, I think go, okay, I'm going to resolve the tension by lowering what I'm seeking.
Yes.
I don't need to get to the top or
Right.
the summit.
Right.
I don't need a relationship that's a 10. I'll settle.
Correct.
I'll cope. I'll get along. I'm stoic for doing so. And then it's a trap.
Yep. Yeah, it's totally true.
So we have a focus in achieving optimal and underneath the umbrella of the 1% Club that is working with people in all areas of life. And that's kind of what I think attracted us and connected us originally. And a lot of my clients, the vast majority, are business owners, entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And they're driven, as we have talked about over and over again, not so much by money, but or making money. That's important. But what they're
Right.
really driven by is the freedom.
Yes.
In fact, I think there's two words that sum up what motivates most of my clients. It's freedom and influence.
Yes.
It just so happens that it's easier to experience freedom and to have influence when you've earned money.
Yes.
And so it's a very big part of our coaching, but so is the faith piece,
Yes.
being a good husband or wife, mom
Yes.
or dad, and being fit and lean so that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yes.
And so that you can put in the long days, because working smart is important, but there are certain phases where you've got to work hard,
Yes.
and there is no shortcut to it. But one of the things that I have noticed and observed, and we've talked about it a lot, is there's sometimes a gap with an entrepreneur and their wealth
Yes.
plan.
Yes.
And they're this is a good thing, and then it's a bad thing on the other side. The good thing is their tunnel vision
Correct.
on the actual business, where they are spending most of their days, where they have their experience, they have their clients, they're trying to grow their business, and they have accumulated some money,
Yes.
maybe even some wealth,
Yes.
and it's not getting optimized.
Correct.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you, in addition to talking about your goals and talking about how we've worked together as a model for how others can shape their future and use a coach to go from good to great. I wanted to bring your expertise into helping clients test their assumptions
Sure.
on their finances.
Yes.
So, you have been and are a trader, an investor, now you're educating and people to use some of the principles and methods that you've mastered with some e-courses.
Yes.
But you're still an entrepreneur at
Yes.
heart. I mean, you are on your own.
Yes.
You know, and it's kind of a special fraternity when you're an entrepreneur.
Yep.
That if you haven't done that, then you don't relate totally to what it's like. Kind of like, you know, if we tried to tell our spouses, you know, when they're pregnant, we tried to say, well, I know how you feel. That if we were still alive after uttering those words, it would be total nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And it is that extreme, I believe, for somebody who, you know, we're surrounded in the coaching center here with whiteboards, and it's like a blank whiteboard. There's a blank one behind you, and I'm looking at it. And that's what it's like in the life of an entrepreneur. It's nothing.
Right.
It's just a blank whiteboard.
Right.
There's not a check coming. There's not guaranteed support.
Right.
There is really, it's all what you make of it.
Yes.
So you can create a magnificent life. So what I love for you to do and share with my audience is, what should people be thinking about when they've got some money and they want to grow it, but maybe they're taking a very traditional path, or they've delegated,
Yes.
or sometimes I think even abdicated.
Yes.
It's real easy to do if that's not your thing, and you're all about ownership.
Yep.
You know, the entrepreneur.
Yep.
Having ownership of their financial future. So give kind of an introduction to how you've grown that side of your business and life, and what your approach is to managing money that's kind of different than the standard.
Sure. Well, I think first of all, I've always been fascinated by finance. I've been a trader, so I've been fascinated by the trading aspect of finance, but I've really been fascinated by finance in general. Everything from how people budget and how they save, to how they grow those savings and the different avenues that are available to them. And I think one thing for me is that I really think in terms of processes and systems. And I think what's really important is that you have to have a plan. Now, when you go through...
What a great idea.
Right? Right?
Yep.
And it's not a slogan to go on the wall. I mean, that's for real, right? And so my experience, both with traders and businessmen, there's some parallels there. And what some of the parallels are is they put all their focus into the business, and they do it really well. Like you said, they succeed because of the focus they do put into it. And it's hard. The early stages of building a business is difficult. And there's a lag, right? They're working really hard and you don't see the fruits of it.
That's right.
But those fruits are coming, but you don't know that, right? You're hoping.
Yeah, there's no guarantee of those fruits coming.
Right.
No matter how carefully you plant the seeds.
Right.
It may work or it may not work.
Right. Is a little sub bar. You know, one of the things I think is fascinating is when you talk about minimum wage or now universal life payments or these sort of things, right? I always think about, and this is a really valuable lesson I got from my dad. My dad had started a car leasing business, and he asked me to help him in building that business. This was when I was in college. And so I spent a year working with him in the business. And the business was really struggling. And, you know, he basically offered to pay me as basically like a commission for every car we leased. And the number, if I leased a car, I mean, I'd do real well for a 20-year-old kid. I was excited about that. But when we actually were doing it, we didn't have any business. So I'm not getting paid. And I'm working my butt off in this business. And I'm watching my dad work his butt off in the business. And it really hit me like, I'm actually like, he's actually losing money. So people will say, well, I need a $15 an hour minimum wage or $20 an hour minimum wage. But the entrepreneurs out there putting in 50, 100-hour weeks and losing money. So what is his hourly wage?
Right, right.
Who is there to bail him out? He's assuming a massive amount of risk, both financially and psychologically.
Well, that's what I mean with the pregnant analogy.
Yeah.
It's just the vast majority, I think entrepreneurs are the saving grace of our economy.
Yes.
because they're willing to take a risk without a guarantee of a reward. But the rest of the population, unfortunately, and some of this is, there's rhetoric out there and so forth, doesn't understand what they've done.
Yes.
They on one extreme, they can even be positioned as the bad guy.
Absolutely.
Yet I've got plenty of clients that at one time or another paid all their employees. I mean, that's what virtually every entrepreneur has at one time or another. I've done it. Paid staff and employees in the team when they weren't able to pay themselves.
Yes.
They put payroll on an Amex card.
Yes.
They've done all sorts of clever things to make sure their people are taken care of. And that kind of just goes under the radar and is unnoticed.
It's actually very selfless, right?
Yes.
In some aspects. I'm glad you brought that up because it's absolutely true. And so to get a business up and going, it takes a lot of focus, sometimes a lot of heartache. And so now when you see business owners really start to be successful, and now the business just starts to run itself to some degree. One of the things I've noticed is that they make money in the business, sometimes a lot of money, but they don't make money in their investments, and they don't make money with their savings. In fact, a lot of times they lose it. They make $300,000 a year in their business, and they lose $50,000 a year on other things.
And why is that?
And I think it's one, because they don't apply the same focus to their investments as they do to their business. And more importantly, they don't have a plan.
But so they don't apply almost like a hands off.
Yes.
Like, okay, here's some money, hand it off to the advisor. You handle that for me.
Right.
And then I'm putting my mind back on my business. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. In some cases, that's absolutely what I'm talking about. In other cases, you may have a lot of success in one business, and now people are starting to come to you with other business ideas. And you think you're really smart because you do well in this business. So now you start investing in other businesses that you really don't understand. You really don't know.
I'm thinking of people right now.
Right. And then you look back and, well, I lost all my money in that investment. I lost all my money in that investment, because most businesses don't make it. And we think we really think we're smarter than the average, right? So we're a successful businessman. This will work for us. But we don't have a rigorous plan or a rigorous process of how we do our investing. Our brother-in-law says, "Hey, I got this new thing I'm doing. Will you help me?" Sure. You write him a check for $50,000. It's gone. You never see it again, right? And even if he's had the best of intentions, that's just the law of averages, how a lot of these things work. And so some people abdicate and delegate. Other people are just taking random shots. But what's common amongst all of that is none of them have a plan. Now, they're busy. So when we have a plan, one of the key elements, and you know this, when we set goals, they have to be achievable. And they have to be, we want to shoot for the sky, but they have to be done in a way that they don't dominate our life. Some goals certainly will be that way, but other goals, you have to be able to do them in a certain amount of time, or it's not realistic. You follow what I'm saying?
Give me an example. Because
sure.
I like to always describe that, we need to throw in many ways. We don't know if we're trying to reach a goal that we've never reached before.
Yes.
Then we don't really know how to reach it.
Right.
Which is a good thing.
Right.
But some people won't set a goal unless they know how to reach it. But that's kind of crooked thinking, because that means they won't grow beyond their current capabilities. But then the ultimate goal can be something that is very crazy and wild and huge and audacious. But the shorter term goals need to be the things that are very achievable and reasonable.
Yes.
Because that's where you're putting most of your attention, or should be putting your attention,
yes.
is on the rung. So what's at the top of the ladder might be magnificent.
Yes.
But what's each rung of the ladder is something that you can visualize a lot easier.
Yes. Well, I think if you were to look at being in great shape, there's different shades of being in great shape. And one of the key elements is how much commitment are you willing to put into it? With your clients, you want them to achieve optimal, but optimal is different for each client. And part of what goes into that equation is what are they willing to commit to doing?
Right. And since you brought that up, step number one I like to use is defining optimal.
Yes.
So if you want to achieve optimal, that's good. But unless you've defined what optimal is,
yes.
then you can't be confident in the steps that you take. So when I'm talking about how do I grow my portfolio in an optimal fashion, what do I need to be concerned with?
Well, so when we're looking at managing a portfolio, I think one of the key things is that we need to have a plan that can be administered without a lot of effort. So you're a businessman, you're really busy, you want to focus on your business. So they don't do anything. The reality is they can't have some crazy in-depth plan because they don't have time to focus on it. They will fail and they will fall short. So what they need to do is they need to have a simple plan that can be executed in anything from a few minutes a day to 30 minutes a month or once a year. It depends on their goal. It goes back to the analogy I was using with fitness. If you want to be a triathlete, there's one set of behavior versus somebody who wants to have great energy to run their business. Optimal sometimes is contextual.
Correct.
Right?
But you got to know what it is.
You have to know what it is, and it has to fit in with the prioritization of other aspects of your life. Everything can't be number one. Some things are going to be 2, 3, or 4, and that's okay. Optimal at number 3 maybe look different. Your optimal at number 3 may be different than my optimal at number 1.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so for a businessman who typically business is 1 or 2, finances and savings, this has got to be up there, but it has to be in a way that they can consistently execute the plan. They need to have a plan and they need to be able to follow the plan. And that needs to be able to happen in very short windows of time.
So how does somebody do that is, for lack of a better way of saying it, they're consumed with their business?
Right.
That's where their expertise lays. How do they handle both of those things simultaneously?
Well, I absolutely think they can. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to give them some suggestions and some ideas that they can do on their own. I really believe that you need to own your savings in your portfolio. So if you have an investment advisor is like a key member of your team, but he's not the team. You're the coach of the team. He's not the coach, right? And so just like when you run your business, you run your business. And so in a case like this, you need to have a plan that your investment advisor helps you execute the plan, not delegating it necessarily to the advisor, if that makes sense.
Yes. So that's that you said, like, be the owner, not the coach. I mean, your advisor is the coach, not the owner. You stay in the ownership role. Is that the way you described it?
Yes. I said the analogy I use is you're actually the coach.
Okay.
And the advisor is a member of your team.
Okay.
He's a player in your team.
Okay. So I like that even
Yes.
better.
Yes.
But obviously you're also the owner.
Right. Yes.
You're the ultimate owner.
Yes.
But you can't be hands off.
Yes.
But you can't have a convoluted, complex methodology.
Correct.
That hijacks too much of your time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of great businessmen I know, and this is something you've taught, is they have their own board of advisors. They have a team that they return to for legal, for accounting, for finance, spiritual, all these different components, right? So you'll have somebody who helps you implement your investment goals, but he's on that board of advisors. He's on your team. And so I think we step back a second. When you have a business that's successful and this business is now spitting off cash, you want to have a plan for what you're going to do with that cash. And a key part of that plan is that you need to be able to grow that money in a consistent way and minimize drawdowns. And one of the concerns I have is that if you look at the general portfolio that people in society have, the portfolio is actually really risky. It's far more risky than they think.
In what sense?
So, well, I just think anybody who has been investing for any period of time, if you go back to 2008 and you look at what either happened to your portfolio or people that you know, a lot of people had their portfolios absolutely decimated in 2008. And part of that is because of the mix that they're being taught to put in. You're basically taught, put most of your money in stocks, put a small amount of money in bonds, keep a little bit of cash on hand, and that's the way you maximize your portfolio.
And I think a lot of chatter that I hear is that people are almost resigned to the disaster of 2008.
Yes.
In other words, they go, well, yeah, something like that might happen.
Yes.
You just have to work through it, that kind of thing.
Right.
Versus, how do I work around it?
Yes.
to where I'm not sucked into it. I don't participate in it.
Right.
What is the better strategy there?
Well, the better strategy is to create a better portfolio. And this is part of having a plan. If you can create a better portfolio, you can minimize drawdowns. So one of the things I always talk about is that when you see the stock market return numbers, in some level, they're fictional. They'll say, the market was up 30% this year, and it was up 15% the next year, and then it was down 20%. Well, those are annual return numbers. And the most important number is the compounded annual return, not the return. Okay, and so a good example is, we talk about the impact of drawdowns. If you go through and you lose 50% in a given year of your portfolio, let's say you have a $100,000 account, and the stock market has a horrible year and you lose 50%. Well, how much money do you have left at the end of the year? 50,000, right? Okay. So now the next year, the market comes screaming back and has a banner year, and it's up. It's up 50%, right? Now, net over the 2 years, when you look at the annual returns, everybody's back to even. The market was down 50%, now it's up 50%, right? But your account went from 100,000 to 50,000 in year one. Now it's up 50%, so now it goes 25. From 50 to 75,000. So while all the literature is saying the stock market is unchanged over 2 years, you're actually down 25%.
So how do people miss that?
I think, first of all the marketing doesn't want to go there. You read mutual fund prospectuses, they're done by average annual return, not by compounded return. Advisors often put that out as well. And so they're focused on the annual return. That's part of the issue. And then the second part is, I think they just ignore it. They don't want to face the fact that could be a problem. So if you go back to 2008, the market was down 38% for the year. It was down 57% at one point in 2008. Came back, it was down 38% for the year. If you had gone through 2008, you did not fully recover your principal in your stock portfolio until the end of 2012. 3 of the 4 years were up. 2009, 2010, and 2012 were up years. 2011 was slightly down. It took you 4 years to get back what you lost in 1 year. So if the drawdowns are less, it's much easier to recover. And so when we build our portfolio, whether I'm in trading or I'm investing, I start with the risk first. I work from the risk side, and then I work to the return side. We need to keep our money. We need to minimize the effect of drawdowns. So as business owners,
that's a huge point right there.
It's a huge point.
That's kind of master strategy. Minimize the effect of a drawdown,
yes.
Right?
And one of the issues I have with how things are now is investors are taught there's going to be these times, these periods where you're going to lose a lot of money in your portfolio. And what you need to do is you need to suck it up and wait for it to come back. Because it always comes back. That's the belief. The stock market will just go higher over time. The ironic thing is that if you actually look, the United States stock market is somewhat of an anomaly. The U.S. stock market has gone up for the last 100 years. But if you actually go through and you look at other countries, that's not the case. If you go look at the Nikkei in Japan, it peaked in 1992. And basically for 25 years, it was down to flat. It didn't come back. So when you had a 50% drawdown in the Nikkei, you didn't get that back. That's possible here. We dismiss the possibility of that being the case, but it's absolutely possible because that is what goes on in other areas of the world and through history. So that's one aspect. The second part of that is, so you're being told just suck it up and wait for it to come back.
Right.
Well, that's the mistake. What you need to do.
That's the resignation. That there's no other better approach.
Right. So when we take a better approach, what we do is we minimize the drawdown. We don't have to be in that position. So now, why is this not out there more? One of the things in any problem is you want to examine where are the incentives and the disincentives. And if we look at how the financial system is set up, incentives are set up for people to invest in certain products. If you look at what's available in your 401k or IRA, you can only invest in certain things, right? Those products you can invest in are sponsored or blessed by big banks and institutions.
Right.
Why? Because they make money off of those. Right? The whole thing is a big money-making game. And so when you look at your portfolio, one of the things that I'll talk a little bit about now is, for example, there's a guy named Harry Brown, who Harry Brown in the early 1980s came up with what he called a permanent portfolio. And he had spent a lot of time looking at different periods in history and basically saying, okay, how can we build a portfolio that would be able to do well and minimize drawdowns, as I said, and be able to generate consistent returns over time. And he had different variables in there. He identified 4 variables. And that was inflation, deflation, economic growth, and economic contraction. And so he basically said, okay, we're going to put 4 types of asset classes into the mix. We're going to have a stock allocation because there is a good reason to be invested in stocks, but we're going to be smart about it. And in the permanent portfolio, we put 25% into stocks, 25% into long-term bonds, 25% into gold, and 25% into cash or treasury bills. And basically leaving that portfolio over time, it returns 7% a year, which is nothing amazing, but 7% a year, and a max drawdown is 17%. And it makes money most years. If you compare that with a stock portfolio, the stock portfolio makes 9.5%, so it makes more money. But you have to weather a 58% drawdown and multiple drawdowns at 25, 30, 35%. Okay, and it's psychologically very difficult to be able to stay in a position when you have losses that big.
Right, right.
You go back to 2008, a lot of people panicked and they dumped their entire portfolio because they couldn't deal with the pain anymore. And then they started getting in 3, 4, 5, 6 years later when the market's making new highs. Okay, it's because they got emotional and they didn't follow a plan. When you have a plan, you can stick through the turmoil and know that you'll come out the other side and you'll be okay. So one of the things that's not often thought about too is you can leverage some of these things. So a portfolio that returns 7% with a 17% drawdown, you could leverage it 2 times. Well, 2 times, it has a 14% return with a 34% drawdown, which is much better than the stock market return at 9% with a 57% drawdown. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, again, it's the drawdowns.
It's the drawdown.
That wreck people's
right
plans or non-plans.
Right. And so if you look at that portfolio, though, the financial community is incentivized to sell you stocks and sell you bonds. They're not incentivized for you to be invested in gold or hold cash. And I think one of the keys of, if you look at the ultra wealthy, and I have lots of friends that fell in this bucket. If you go through and you look where a lot of wealthy people really make money, is they have cash when you hit a downfall, when you hit a downturn. You go through 2008, there's great deals everywhere. There's a lot of smart people. They know there's great deals out there. The issue is they don't have any money.
Right.
They've lost it all. They're down 50% of their portfolio and they're fully invested. They have no reserves to invest in anything. You go through and what most people don't know. For example, like IndyMac. IndyMac was one of the big banks that failed in 2008. Well, United States Treasury came in and they gathered up a team of investors, and I know it was Michael Dell, George Soros, Thomas Lee, and there was a 4th one I forget. But basically, they came in and said, we want you to save IndyMac. And this is what we're going to do. You're going to put up, I forget what the number was. Let's just say it was $4 billion. You each are going to put up $1 billion each. And you're going to get ownership in IndyMac, and we're going to unwind it. And basically, you're going to get the residual returns of IndyMac when we're done unwinding it. Oh, but by the way, we're going to guarantee you a 25% annual return payment if the unwinding of IndyMac is less than that number. They were guaranteed 25% a year on $1 billion. I think that was the number. Okay? Because they had the $1 billion in cash to invest. Nobody else did.
Yeah.
Now for the government, it was great. Why would the government do this? Because they could take it off the books. And now IndyMac is no longer a failure sitting on the government books. It's sitting on an individual investor's books. makes them look better. It makes things cleaner. And the idea is that they know it's so good, they probably don't have to pay down the road. The beauty is if they do, they'll just print the money, right? But I have another friend who...
That's the fix-all for many of the problems.
It's a fix-all for a lot of the problems, yes. I have another friend in Australia who's a big trader. He had a big cash portfolio. He went out. You have a lot of clients that invest in commercial real estate, as I understand.
Yeah,
is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So he actually didn't even know much about commercial real estate, but he had a war chest of cash, and he started deploying it in commercial real estate in the Sydney area in 2009, 10, and 11. And he made millions off those investments. And what's really interesting is what's he been doing over the last 2 years? He's been selling them off one at a time, reducing the portfolio, and raising cash. And he will close on his last building this spring. He'll be completely out, having done extremely well. You know what his mind game is? His mindset? He's preparing for the next downturn so he can do it again. So we are taught by the financial community that holding cash is a waste. That is money that's not earning a return, and we need to maximize our returns. However, by doing so, we put ourselves in a position where we have no liquidity to respond to special situations.
Such as a big downturn where you can then...
Yes. And these payoffs come in lumps. You don't get 10% every year or 50% every year in that situation. You don't really make anything for a period of time, but then you get 150% in 3 years. And that's what makes them so wealthy. And the rich just get richer. Well, they're smart. They have liquidity to respond under distress.
Yeah. In addition to the psychology.
Right.
That naturally goes with that statement of the rich getting richer.
Correct.
Because they're thinking differently than everybody else.
Correct.
So if you think like everybody else who does not have that wealth,
correct,
then you'll get those same results.
Yes.
So to a large degree, we succeed to the degree that we're willing to be contrarian.
Yes.
In how we approach not just our financial life, but our life as a whole.
Absolutely. If we take this back to what we're discussing with your clients, a key element of that is that most people's businesses are tied to the economic cycle. So when the economy is doing really well, they're doing really well. But when the economy turns south, like in 2008, they get hurt, right? And so part of being a great businessman is not just looking at the success of your business, but looking beyond that. And so if you have a plan where you are consistently saving money from the business and you are growing it in a way that minimizes drawdowns, has some good compounding, you're making 6 to 10% a year or better, but you're not making 50% a year, but you're doing it with minimal drawdowns and you are having a war chest of cash that you're building, then two things happen. When the economic downturn comes, and it always comes, you and I know this, right? We're old enough now. There's always downturns.
It's just when. It's just a matter of time.
It's just when, right? What happened right now, we're in a period of prosperity that's relatively unprecedented, right? We're now on year 10. That's not usually how it goes. It's usually 3 to 5 years these cycles come. And so when the next downturn comes, if you follow these principles, one, you have cash on hand, which will allow your business to be strong, to weather the downturn. Now you're not worried about going bankrupt or losing everything. And two, you now can be opportunistic on lots of opportunities that have become available to you.
Well, I know you've got, lay out the whole plan, lay out the whole kind of what we talked about before was the entrepreneurial plan.
Yes.
And the buckets.
Yes.
Lay that out as kind of a recap.
Yeah. So,
because I thought that was very clear cut and would speak to a lot of my clients.
Yeah. So one of the things I learned when I was studying, I actually, I had heard that Tony Robbins had gotten this from John Templeton. It was called the 3-bucket system. And the 3-bucket system was basically a system to be able to know where to allocate your savings and have a system for how you compound and grow your wealth. And I really liked it. And what the 3-bucket system is you really have 3 buckets in which you place money. You have a conservative bucket, you have an aggressive bucket, and then what's cool you don't see is you have a dream bucket.
Yeah, I love that.
You don't see that in other concepts like this.
Explain how this works.
So the idea of this is that you take your income, let's say from your business, and let's just say for argument's sake, your business does 500,000 a year in gross revenue, and your business has $200,000 in expenses, and you pay yourself a $150,000 salary. That's what you live on. Okay. So after expenses and your salary, there's a net income of $150,000 that remains. You take that $150,000 and you have the plan. You decide in advance how you're going to allocate that $150,000, and it gets allocated across two buckets: conservative bucket and aggressive bucket. Keep it real simple. Let's just say you decide it's 50-50. You're going to put $75,000 into the conservative bucket, and you're going to put $75,000 into the aggressive bucket. Okay. Now let's talk for a minute about what does a conservative bucket and aggressive bucket mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So the conservative bucket is this bucket is a pool of savings, one that you never intend to touch. You just are going to keep funding it, and that's going to effectively be your rainy day fund, your backup retirement plan, this sort of thing. Okay. And what goes in your conservative bucket is potentially like the all-weather portfolio we're talking about. A typical portfolio like that most people have their money in is too risky to go in a conservative bucket, because you can't afford to take, the objective is not to take a 30% hit in that bucket. Right? You know, you ideally you're keeping the risk at 10% or less.
Okay.
Right? And then your objective is to make 6 to 10, 12% a year on that portfolio with minimal work. So one great place, one great vehicle in the conservative bucket is actually paying down your mortgage. And people will say, well, you shouldn't pay down your mortgage because you lose the tax deduction. I always think that's silly, because where does the tax deduction come from? It comes from the fact you're paying interest. You're wasting money on the interest, right? And if you look at your interest rate, let's just say you have a 4% mortgage. Your effective return on paying down a 4% mortgage is much higher than that. Because if you made that 4%, you'd be taxed on it at anywhere from ordinary income to capital gains, right? So let's just say you were taxed at 40% at ordinary income. A 4% return actually only yields 2.6% after tax. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, 2.4%. I'm sorry, 2.4%. Okay, so but when you pay down the mortgage, you're saving on interest. You're actually getting a return greater than that, because you're saving the 4% interest costs. It's not return from an investment; it's interest savings. So you actually are earning more like 6%, risk-free, right? When you pay down your mortgages, you can't lose that money. It's risk-free. So that's one thing that sits in the bucket. Your 401k, your IRA, a 6-month rainy day fund. These are the kind of things that go in the conservative bucket. And as it gets bigger and bigger, then you can have like this all-weather portfolio, either in a 401k or in an IRA, and also in your regular conservative savings.
Right.
And what the idea is that this bucket just keeps growing. It's 6 to 10, 12% a year with very little risk. And if you keep putting money into that, and you do that for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to have a lot of money. And and your house will be paid for, your expense burden will be low, and you'll be in great shape. Okay. Now, again, we start always with the risk. So by having the conservative bucket, we're addressing our risk. We're putting ourselves in a position of strength.
Right from the beginning.
Right from the beginning. Now we're allocating another 50% to the aggressive bucket.
How does that work? What is your thought process on that? What does that mean?
So,
how do you define aggressive?
Yeah, so with the aggressive bucket, what do we do in the aggressive bucket? Okay, in the aggressive bucket, we can do things like invest in other businesses. We can put money in, for people who have more money, you can put money in hedge funds or private equity funds. One of the things that I do a lot of and teach, I teach a method of stock trading that returns 40% a year with a 20% drawdown. It's made money every year since we've implemented it.
Right. And so, got to stop you there.
Yeah.
So, tell us more.
Yeah. So it's
repeat it or describe it again, and then tell us what you mean exactly.
That's one of the things that we teach in one of our workshops, our Reads 101 Stock Workshop. We basically teach people how to have a mechanical system that returns that return profile, 40% a year And we've been tracking that since 2007. So we had it in 2007 and 2008, which were big down years 2008 was a big down year for the market. That portfolio made 55% in 2007 and 72% in 2008. And why? Because we actually teach people how to go short stocks. When you short a stock, you actually are borrowing a stock and selling it to somebody else and then buying it back later and replacing it. So it allows you to profit from the value of a stock going down, which happens in these bad negative periods, right? So the method did really well being short in 2007 and 2008. But then it tilted back to being long. So we have a timing model that we use that's really cool. It's based on supply in the market, basically how much selling is in the market. And what's really interesting is that at stock market tops, you actually see all this selling emerge as the market's making new highs. And it gives you a sense that smart money knows that the end is getting near and they're dumping everything. Okay.
And this is automated? Explain how this works.
So we teach people the steps, and we basically give them a process where they can execute the steps themselves. And the great thing about it is it can take them 5 to 10 minutes a day. We have a couple supporting tools, some subscriptions they can subscribe to. We do a lot of the work for them.
By the way, we're going to put that in the show notes so everybody can have the link to figure out how to get connected with you and learn that method.
Awesome, thank you. Or we teach them how to do it on their own. And you can use a program called stockcharts.com. It's about $30 a month to be able to track all this. So it's minimal cost, minimal time, and really good return. Now,
who is the ideal candidate for that? Who should be interested in learning more about that?
Well, first of all, anybody who has an interest in stock trading, this is a great way to learn. If you've ever been interested in it and you're not really sure where to go or that sort of thing, it's really simple, doesn't take a lot of time, and has outstanding principles in it. So you're going down the right road, right path right away. But I also think, like what we're talking about, like with a business owner, this could be a strategy they employ in their aggressive bucket. Now, notice I'm saying aggressive, not conservative.
Right.
Conservative, they have this other portfolio that has minimal drawdowns. But because they have that now gives them the freedom to pursue a strategy like this. Because we don't know. It may not perform like that in the future. We think it will, but we don't know.
Right.
We're not.
But it's all part of the plan. So one reason you may not take more smart risk is because you don't have the conservative bucket in good condition.
Correct.
So therefore you're kind of insecure about that. You know that.
Correct.
So you're not really as conservative as you ought to be in any sense, but you're not as aggressive as you ought to be.
Correct.
And so together is how it works, right?
Yes.
As part of a unit.
They work together. Yes. And one of the things Robert Kiyosaki talks about is that a lot of times the average person, they don't want risk, but their lifestyle is risky. Right? They spend too much money and they put themselves in a vulnerable state because they don't save, they don't budget, they're not disciplined in their spending.
They're lost.
Yes.
Often they don't know what they're spending, where the money's going.
Right. And budgeting is a whole nother discussion, but what we're talking about here is putting frameworks in place that build people to allow them to be in a position of strength, right? One other thing with the aggressive bucket, particularly for businessmen, is investments in other businesses. You want to go start another business? You do it with the funds that are available in the aggressive bucket. And they know that, right? They're doing really well with their business. They know they can get phenomenal returns out of a business if it goes. Well, that allows them to invest in other businesses, build little mini empires, right? And do it out of that bucket. Now, the cool thing then is that what do you do with the returns? The return in the conservative bucket stays there. So if you get 8% a year, that 8% gets reinvested. It just compounds and is never touched.
All right, good.
The aggressive bucket, you take the returns from the aggressive bucket. And again, you can adjust these ratios that you want, but the standard way you do this is you take 33% of your profits from the aggressive bucket and you allocate them to the conservative bucket. So you're making yourself even safer. Then you take 33% of the profits from the aggressive bucket and you reinvest them in the aggressive bucket, giving you more money to invest in cool things. aggressive things.
Right.
And then you take 33%.
Yeah, this is what I love right here.
And you allocate it to the dream bucket.
Love it.
And what is the dream bucket? The dream bucket is for whatever you want it to be for. It could be...
It's to live your life now.
Right. To live your dreams.
Yeah.
You wanted to have a Porsche. You wanted a Porsche your whole life. You buy your Porsche out of the dream bucket. You wanted a second home on the lake. Buy it out of the dream bucket. You want to go to Europe with your family. You do it out of the dream bucket. You want to give a bunch of money to charity. You can do that out of the dream bucket too. You can do whatever you want to do. But what's great is you have a plan that money has sorted through multiple compounding and multiple revenue streams to get there. And now, if you follow that plan, the dream bucket will just grow and grow and grow. You can do insane things with it.
Well, it allows you to truly live now.
Yes.
The way that you want to live.
Yes.
So how can, if I'm hearing this and I'm intrigued, how do I learn more about the course or the workshop? And you've got an e-course that's being developed.
Yes.
And you've got a current set of workshops that people can go to. What explain the difference of those?
So people can go to reedstrader.com. It's spelled REEDS. It's kind of a play on words.
Yeah.
And what
everybody makes up their own spelling of things these days.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We got in the mix too.
Good.
Yeah. The idea of this is that basically we teach you how to read the market. That's where the Reed's Trader came from.
Yeah.
But on our site, reedstrader.com, we have different product offerings. We have this Reed's 101 stock market trading workshop that I described. You can take that. You can buy the video of a past course. We're going to be launching it as an e-course in January, and there also will be live events coming up for it.
Fantastic.
In the spring. Then for those who want to go beyond that, they really want to learn about stock trading. We have the Reed's 201 Advanced Workshop. In an advanced stock market trading workshop, we have advanced techniques to teach people to act.
You go through the first one, the 101 first, and then
you need to go through the 101 first. It wouldn't make sense otherwise.
And are these for anybody? I mean, who would be a good fit for either of these trainings?
I think somebody who's interested in the stock market, they find it very interesting and they want to understand how to invest better. That would be a great way to do it.
And this would be, if you simply want to be a better coach of your advisor,
yes,
this would help you be a better coach.
If to be a better coach of your advisor, we have another product called the Portfolio Strategy Letter.
Okay, excellent.
And that is really for people to focus on their conservative bucket. We have a strategy in the Portfolio Strategy Letter called the High Yield Portfolio. The High Yield Portfolio has basically returned 10.5% a year for 26 years with a max drawdown of 12%. It never had a losing year, ever. Again, it may happen in the future, but it hasn't happened so far.
Yeah.
And that is something that they could do in their conservative bucket. Like for traders, we recommend they take their trading profits and they put it into the high yield strategy and they let it compound. That is a great place for people to go, and they just subscribe to the service. And they can do it on their own, or they can have their investment advisor help them do it. And we have some really good kind of information about the discussion we had today that if you were to email me at support@reedstrader.com, I'll send you basically a report that describes the Harry Brown permanent portfolio, describes Ray Dalio's all-weather portfolio.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm looking at it right now, and it's also very simple.
Yes.
In other words, you have a knack for breaking things down and making them simple and easy for people to understand that I think is good.
Thanks.
Particularly people that are not financial people by nature.
Yeah, thank you.
So, well, we're just about out of time, but all the links and the email, contact, information on the e-course, the workshops, all that is going to be on the show notes. So we'll have that posted.
Great.
And I think this was a lot of fun. So we'll need to do it again.
I would love to come back.
And go a little deeper. But as always, your success blesses others.